Welcome to Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys. My name is Jessica, and I am a passionate seeker of history's hidden chapters, mysteries that linger in the shadows, and the inexplicable phenomena of the paranormal world. My fascination with the past, the enigmatic, and the otherworldly has led me on countless journeys through time and space, uncovering secrets long whispered in the corridors of the forgotten and the abandoned. In this captivating season, we take a departure from our usual expeditions across various haunted locales. Instead, we anchor our curiosity at one extraordinary site, the RMS Queen Mary. This legendary ocean liner, a behemoth of history and mystery, will be our sole focus, our solitary journey through the annals of time and the spectral realms. From the elegance of the Lady in White to the playful echoes of Little Jackie, from the heart-wrenching tales of wartime sacrifice to the eerie stillness of her abandoned decks. Every episode will unveil a chapter of the Queen Mary's storied past, intertwined with encounters that challenge the boundaries of our understanding. So, I invite you, my fellow aficionados of the arcane, to join me on this singular expedition aboard the RMS Queen Mary. History, mystery, and the paranormal converge in a tapestry of tales as deep and fathomless as the ocean herself. This is Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys. Let the voyage into the unknown commence. In this episode, we dive into a pivotal chapter in the RMS Queen Mary's history. As World War II casts its shadow across the globe, our majestic vessel takes on a new role, transforming into the Grey Ghost. This nickname, born from her stealth and impressive camouflage, masks a deeper, more haunting persona. We explore her journey as a wartime troopship, carrying soldiers to the front lines, and the stories of courage, sacrifice, and resilience embedded in her iron-clad frame. But within this vessel of war, there lurks a presence far more mysterious than the fog of battle. We turn our attention to the enigmatic Grumpy, a spectral entity known for its growling echoes that reverberate through the ship's pools and boiler rooms. What secrets does Grumpy guard? Why does the spirit, so different from the elegant apparitions we've encountered, choose to make its presence known in such a chilling manner? Join us as we navigate the dual personas of the Queen Mary, as both the great ghost of war and a vessel haunted by the growls of an unseen spirit. Tonight, we peel back the layers of history and the paranormal to uncover what lies beneath the surface of this iconic ship. The RMS Queen Mary, a paragon of luxury that once ferried the world's elite across the Atlantic in opulent comfort, stood at the brink of a transformation as monumental as the war that demanded it. In 1939, as the shadow of conflict spread across Europe, the Queen Mary underwent a metamorphosis from a floating palace of leisure to a stalwart vessel of war. She was to become the Grey Ghost, a nickname that foretold her new spectral existence on the high seas. A far cry from the shimmering white giant that once captured the world's imagination. As World War II ignited, the Queen Mary's regal interiors, which had played host to the likes of dignitaries and stars, were stripped of their grandeur. Her gleaming hull was painted a camouflaged gray, a color that would allow her to slip through the waters, a ghostly apparition elusive to the enemy's eyes. Her transformation was a dire reflection of the times, where once the laughter of the carefree and the clink of champagne glasses filled the air, now the silence of secrecy and the weight of duty prevailed. The Queen Mary's ballrooms and staterooms, where couples had danced and travelers had dreamt, were now repurposed to carry soldiers to the front lines. The same decks that had welcomed the soles of polished shoes and elegant gowns were reinforced to support the boots and gear of up to 15,000 troops at a time. Every inch of her 1,019-foot length was recalibrated for war. Her capacity expanded, her luxury relinquished in the service of a greater cause. This was no mere retrofit. It was a complete reimagining of purpose. The Queen Mary's transformation was not only physical, but symbolic, embodying the shift from individual indulgence to collective sacrifice. Her speed, once a marvel that entertained and impressed, now became her greatest weapon. It allowed her to evade the lurking menace of enemy submarines and to ferry thousands of Allied soldiers with a haste that would prove pivotal in the war's outcome. In the heart of the ocean, where the horizon stretched endlessly and the threat of danger was as palpable as the salt in the air, the gray ghost moved with stealth and purpose. Her majestic silhouette, now a muted shadow against the vast expanse of water, carried the hopes and fears of the free world on her sturdy shoulders. She was no longer a mere vessel. She was a floating fortress, a leviathan of war, tasked with a mission that was as vital as it was daunting. Yet, amid the transformation, the essence of the Queen Mary endured. The spirit of adventure and exploration that had characterized her maiden voyage lingered, now channeled into the unyielding spirit of war. The soldiers who walked her decks may have marveled at the remnants of her past glory, finding in them a brief respite from the grim reality of their mission. The Queen Mary's journey from luxury liner to troopship is a tale of resilience and reinvention. Her walls, which had echoed with the sounds of celebration, now resonated with the resolve of those she carried into battle. As the Grey Ghost, she became an emblem of wartime tenacity, a testament to the endurance of the human spirit when faced with the direst of circumstances. As Europe plunged deeper into the throes of war, the RMS Queen Mary donned her cloak of gray, disappearing into the fog of conflict as the Grey Ghost. Her new color scheme, a drab hue of camouflage, rendered her a phantom against the vast canvas of the sea, her once gleaming hull now a specter of stealth in the deadly game of wartime maritime strategy. This transformation was more than mere paint. It was an embodiment of her new role in the greatest conflict of the modern age. The Queen Mary's legendary speed, a source of pride during her peacetime voyages, became an invaluable asset in the war effort. She glided through the waters with a quiet urgency, her engines a hushed purr compared to the celebratory roars of her record-breaking past. She was a shadow slipping through the night, her wake a whisper that confounded the German U-boats that hunted her. In her new guise, the Queen Mary was not merely transporting troops. She was safeguarding the future of nations. Each soldier aboard was a story, a hope, a dream of victory and homecoming. The Grey Ghost carried them through treacherous waters, where every wave could conceal a predator, every mist could cloak a missile. Her captains navigated with a mix of fear and audacity, knowing that the safety of thousands rested in their hands. The ships crossing were feats of maritime prowess. She zigzagged across the Atlantic, a tactic to confuse any enemy that dared to set its sights on her. The Queen Mary, for all her size and grandeur, became a master of evasion, her movements as unpredictable as the war itself. The soldiers aboard, many of whom had never seen the ocean before, stood on her decks, watching the horizon for threats. Their lives suspended between the deep blue sea and the great uncertainty of the skies. Below decks, the atmosphere was one of tense camaraderie. The grandeur of the Queen Mary's ballrooms and salons had been supplanted by the stark utility of military life. Yet, within the confines of her hull, there existed a microcosm of humanity. Men and women bound by a common purpose. Their lives intertwined by the fate of the free world. The ship's former luxury was a distant memory, now replaced by the stark necessities of survival and strategy. The Grey Ghost was not invulnerable, however. The threat of the German wolf packs was ever present, a peril that hung over each voyage like a shroud. The Queen Mary's crew worked tirelessly, their vigilance a barrier against the dangers that lurked beneath the waves. There were moments when the threat materialized, a torpedo's trail or a periscope's glimpse, but each time, the Queen Mary danced away. Her agility defying her size, her ghostly guise a protector against the dark intentions of her foes. The ship's wartime service was a stark contrast to her maiden voyage. A journey not of celebration, but of solemn duty. Each arrival at port was not met with fanfare and jubilation, but with a collective sigh of relief. The disembarkation of her precious cargo, a quiet victory in the instrumental progression of the war. The Grey Ghost had emerged as an icon of resilience, a vessel that carried within her steel frame the weight of warfare and the whispers of peace. Her transformation from luxury liner to troopship was not only a marvel of wartime ingenuity, but also a profound statement of the Queen Mary's indomitable spirit. A spirit that would guide her through the darkest waters to emerge as a beacon of hope in a world at war. The RMS Queen Mary, the once gleaming jewel of the Cunard line, had become a towering bastion of hope and military might in her wartime guise as the Grey Ghost. She traversed the Atlantic not in the pursuit of leisure, but laden with the weight of war. Her decks crammed with thousands of soldiers whose lives were testament to the free world's resistance against tyranny. Each journey was a calculated risk, a delicate dance with danger on the high seas, where the stakes were nations and futures. Adapting to her new role, the Queen Mary's grand spaces, once the epitome of luxury, were transformed into efficient quarters for troops. The contrast was stark. Ballrooms that had echoed with the sounds of orchestra and socialites now hummed with the murmur of soldiers sharing stories, dreams, and letters from home. The ship's very soul seemed to pulse with a new rhythm, one of urgency and purpose, as she carried her human cargo to the front lines of battle. The Queen Mary's wartime voyages were not only strategic, but also symbolic. Her presence in a port signaled strength and solidarity. Her departure, a message of defiance and determination. She carried not just soldiers, but also prisoners of war, diplomats, and refugees. Each group a different note in the symphony of war. Each individual a story intertwined with the fabric of history. Amidst the tumult of war, life aboard the Grey Ghost was a microcosm of the world outside. The camaraderie among the troops was palpable, a shared bond forged in the confines of steel walls moving through perilous waters. The soldiers trained, planned, and even managed to carve out moments of reprieve and entertainment. Despite the cramped conditions, they played cards, wrote in diaries, and forged friendships that would endure beyond the world's end. The Queen Mary's captains and crew faced their own battles, a relentless vigil against the threat of U-boats and enemy craft. They were the unsung heroes, their skill and bravery a crucial element in the Queen Mary's wartime legend. Navigation was an art of precision and nerve, each course plotted with the knowledge that any mistake could be catastrophic. Throughout the war, the Grey Ghost ferried over 800,000 troops, a staggering figure that underscored her significance in the Allied victory. She had become a Levithian of war, her movements a critical component of the military strategy that would ultimately lead to the Axis defeat. Her journeys contributed to a turning tide, each successful crossing a step towards the restoration of peace. The end of the war saw the Queen Mary resume her role as a transporter of humanity, but this time she carried home the weary, the wounded, and the triumphant. She was more than a ship. She was a symbol of the resilience of the human spirit, a vessel that had transcended her commercial origins to become a pivotal player on the world stage. The Queen Mary's wartime service would forever be a defining chapter in her storied existence. As the Grey Ghost, she had witnessed the spectrum of human emotion, from the anxiety of departure to the joy of return. She had played her part with a silent dignity, her gray hull a canvas upon which the saga of war was etched. In the annals of maritime history, she stood not just as a ship, but as a wartime leviathan, her legend as enduring as the lives she touched and the peace she helped to ferry into being. The RMS Queen Mary, once the Grey Ghost of the war, now harbors a different kind of mystery within her storied hull. As visitors wander her long corridors and explore her cavernous engine rooms, some report an eerie and unsettling phenomenon, a deep, guttural growling that seems to emanate from the bowels of the ship. The unexplained auditory presence has been dubbed Grumpy, a spectral entity whose origins and motives are as obscured as the dusky corners from which his growls are said to rise. Grumpy is often experienced in the areas surrounding the now defunct pools and the labyrinthine boiler rooms, a stark contrast to the playful spirit of Little Jackie encountered elsewhere on the Queen Mary. Where her presence is a nostalgic whisper of the ship's glamorous past, Grumpy's is a disconcerting growl, a menacing undertone that speaks to the darker chapters of the ship's history. Visitors who have encountered Grumpy describe the experience as chilling. The sound is not just heard, it's felt, a visceral vibration that seems to resonate with the very steel of the ship. It is as if the Queen Mary herself is responding to an unseen provocation, her aged frame echoing with the discontent of this growling phantom. Some speculate that Grumpy may be the spirit of a former crew member or a soldier who sailed aboard the Queen Mary during her wartime service, his unrest tied to memories of conflict and turmoil. The encounters with Grumpy are as varied as they are mystifying. Some report a sudden drop in temperature when the growls are heard, a classic harbinger of paranormal activity. Others speak of seeing shadowy figures in the periphery of their vision, only for them to disappear when looking upon directly. And then there are those who have felt an inexplicable sense of being watched, of a gruff presence looming just over their shoulder, as tangible as the ocean mist, but as elusive as a wisp of smoke. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the Queen Mary by tales of Grumpy, their equipment often registering unexplained anomalies in the same areas where the growls have been reported. Electronic voice phenomena, also known as EVP sessions, have yielded ambiguous results, Some interpreters of the static-laden recordings claim to hear gruff, terse responses to their queries, as if Grumpy is reluctantly engaging with the living intruders into his domain. The legend of Grumpy has become a compelling thread in the Queen Mary's rich tapestry of ghost stories. It adds a layer of intrigue to the ship's appeal, beckoning the curious and the brave to seek out its source. The growls, whether a trick of the ship's acoustics or the voice of a restless spirit, are a siren call to those fascinated by the supernatural, an invitation to explore the depths of the unknown. As the Queen Mary rests in her permanent berth, the tales of Grumpy persist, a growling counterpoint to the echoes of elegance that still haunt her halls. He is a spectral enigma, as much a part of the ship's enduring mystique as her grand ballrooms and silent engines. Grumpy's growls are the Queen Mary's untold stories, the unseen chapters of a history that refuses to be silent, resonating through time and tide. Amidst the vast expanse of the RMS Queen Mary, in the dimly lit passageways and the echoing chambers of her engine rooms, a unique narrative of this paranormal emerges, a narrative tinged with the unmistakable scent of cigarette smoke. This aromatic enigma intertwines with the haunting presence of Grumpy, adding depth to the legend that continues to ensnare the imaginations of those who tread upon the ship's storied decks. The sensation begins subtly. Visitors meandering through the ship's corridors often pause, their noses twitching as they detect the faint whiff of tobacco. In areas where smoking has long been prohibited, and decades have passed since the last cigarette was lit, the scent remains a pervasive anomaly. It's as if the air itself clings to memories of a bygone era, memories encapsulated in the curling tendrils of smoke that once rose from the lips of sailors, soldiers, and passengers of yesteryears. But there's more to the aromatic haunting than mere nostalgia. Those who have encountered the scent often describe it as being accompanied by an overwhelming sense of presence, an awareness of being observed from the shadows, of unseen eyes tracking their every move. The feeling crescendos in certain sections of the ship, especially near the boiler rooms, where the temperature drops inexplicably and the atmosphere thickens with tension. It is here, amidst the machinery and the metallic hum, that the tales of Grumpy evolve from the mere growls to visible apparitions. Descriptions of these encounters vary, but a common thread emerges: a shadowy figure, often seen from the corner of one's eye, its form hazy and indistinct, yet undeniably human. The figure, always fleeting, disappears upon direct gaze, leaving behind only the smoky aroma and a lingering unease. Whispers among the ship's staff and seasoned paranormal investigators suggest that this smoky spirit might be the very source of Grumpy's discontent. Perhaps he is a former crew member, his life inexorably tied to the Queen Mary, his spirit tethered to her by memories of camaraderie, duty, and perhaps tragedy. The scent of tobacco, a remnant of his earthly habits, serves as a signature of his presence, a sensory marker that defies the passage of time. Some have tried to communicate with the spectral smoker, holding seances and EVP sessions in the hopes of bridging the gap between the living and the ethereal. The results are often inconclusive, with only the faintest of responses caught in the electronic web. Yet, the persistence of the cigarette scent, even in the face of modernity and the ship's meticulous upkeep, remains an endearing mystery. Visitors, drawn to the Queen Mary by tales of the supernatural, often find themselves on a journey of unexpected introspection. The scent of cigarette smoke, intertwined with the ship's haunting lore, evokes powerful emotions, nostalgia for a past never experienced, empathy for souls long departed, and a profound sense of the ephemeral nature of existence. In the heart of the RMS Queen Mary, beyond the grandeur of her preserved ballrooms and the silent elegance of her dormant dining halls, lies the engine room, a place where the heartbeat of the vessel once thundered with life. Now, in the stillness of her retirement, this place becomes a stage for the ghostly narrative of Grumpy, the growling spirit known as the boiler room's keeper. It is in the bowels of the ship where Grumpy is said to hold dominion. The boiler rooms, once roaring with the fires that powered the great liner across the oceans, now lie silent, but for the echoes of a past that refuses to die, here, where the heat was once palpable and the air trembled with the force of steam and steel, visitors report encounters with an unseen force, a presence as formidable as the machinery it once commanded. The identity of Grumpy remains shrouded in the midst of the ship's rich history. Some believe he is the spirit of an engineer, bound to the engines he tended with dutiful care, his soul eternally entwined with the pistons and boilers that were once his charge. Others whisper of a soldier, lost in transit during the Queen Mary's days as the Grey Ghost, his spirit lingering in unrest, his voice the guttural growl that reverberates through the steel corridors. Those who have braved the depths of the ship to seek out Grumpy recount experiences that are as chilling as they are compelling. Tools move of their own accord, shadows filch through the periphery, and the temperature drops in sudden, inexplicable drafts. Some have heard the clang of metal on metal, a residual haunting from the days when the boiler room was a flurry of activity and human toil. Paranormal investigators are drawn to the engine room like moths to a flame, their devices capturing fluctuations in electromagnetic fields and temperatures, signs, they claim, of Grumpy's presence. EVP recordings made in the boiler rooms often contain unexplained noises, some resembling the gruff, barking commands one might expect from a man who once oversaw the heart of a working ship. But there is more to Grumpy than the mere auditory phenomena. He is a keeper, not just of the boiler room, but of stories untold. Tales of the sea, of war, and of the Queen Mary's voyages across the tempestuous waters of history. His growls are a language of loss and longing, a voice from the depths that speaks of the indelible human imprint left upon the ship. As visitors and enthusiasts continue to explore the Queen Mary in search of Grumpy, they find themselves part of a narrative that transcends time. Each step into the boiler room is a step into history, a journey into the spectral heart of the ship. Grumpy, with his territorial growls and the mysterious shadows that accompany his presence, serves as a reminder of the Queen Mary's storied past, a past that lives on not just in the records of maritime history, but in the whispered legends and ghostly encounters that continue to captivate the minds and hearts of those who walk her decks. Grumpy, the boiler room's keeper, is an integral thread in the Queen Mary's paranormal tapestry, a guardian of the gateway between the known and the unknown. His growls, a haunting melody that plays on long after the engines have cooled and the steam has faded into memory. Our journey through the wartime era of the Queen Mary and the unsettling presence of Grumpy has brought us face to face with a ship that has witnessed the extremes of human experience, from the echoing halls of bravery to the shadowy corners of unexplained phenomena. The Queen Mary continues to be a vessel of untold stories and mysteries. As we prepare to disembark from this chapter, the spirit of the Queen Mary lingers, inviting us to explore further. In our next episode of Ancient Secrets and Haunted Journeys, we will delve into one of the most tragic moments in the ship's history, the collision with HMS Curacoa in 1942. Alongside this harrowing event, we will explore the chilling tales of the ship's isolation ward, where the sick and dying were cared for, and where eerie presences have been felt. What ghosts of the past linger in these spaces of healing and despair? What stories are yet to be told from the depth of the Queen Mary's past? Join us next time as we continue to unravel the mysteries of this legendary ship, unearthing the tales of tragedy, resilience, and the unexplained.